So you guys know right now, if you've been working in the real estate market, I had a long talk with Tina Tambor just about our supply problem and what to expect in the next coming months, especially because, there's lots of news with inflation, interest rates rising, and just there's 65,000 of us competing for the same 5,000 listings. So it is a super competitive market, to say the least. And so I know that some of you are struggling with burnout. Some of you guys are struggling with, what's going to happen fears. And I just find that the best way to combat any of that is just to cast the widest net possible that I can for business, and to concentrate on loving on my people, loving on my clients, loving on my partners. And so I couldn't think of anybody better to present to all of us. I know I need the refresher, I need the reboot, than Mr. Thank You himself, guys. His name's John Israel. He has a famous TED Talk, a book. I mean, he's one of the most sought out speakers, and quite frankly, the expert in gratitude and thank you. He started an entire company on, how to retain clients, how to generate new referrals through gifting. And so I am just so super excited. Guys, he started a movement that I want us all to be a part of. So if we could give it up for Mr. John Israel himself. Mr. Thank You. Woo! Yay. That's me and Sammy and everyone clapping on mute, by the way.
Love it. Thanks, Lizzie. Appreciate that introduction, and great to meet everyone here on the call today. I think many of you are in the Phoenix, Arizona area. I will say, last time I was there, I think I spoke for an event for a real estate organization in Peoria. And we also run a gifting company. And I will have to tell you, I think in that moment, the only thing I wish someone had gifted me was like an oven mitt to open my car door, because it was so hot. I didn't know what to do. Like I was like, this is a real thing. Like, you guys deal with this every day. This is my rental car. So anywho, much love to all y'all in the Phoenix, Arizona area. Okay. So yes, thank you for being here today. And I do mean that, because you could literally be anywhere else but here right now. You could be working with clients, you could be working on files, you could be doing anything, but you're choosing to be here. And my goal in our time we have together over the next 56 minutes is that you leave with some significant value to help impact your business, grow your business, and really become irreplaceable, right? It's an interesting statement, right? To become irreplaceable, because what really truly is irreplaceable to us, right? Like and truthfully, we would love to say that we were irreplaceable to our clients, to our database, but are we really? Right? The only things that are truly irreplaceable is like a family heirloom, like a wedding ring from your grandmother or something like that, that if it disappeared, there's no replacement for it, right? And sad to accept, but as business people, if we stop doing what we do or whatever, they're going to find somebody else. They're going to find a different individual to do their business with. So when I say irreplaceable, becoming irreplaceable, I mean that from the lens of, how do we provide such significant and relevant value to our clients that we become somebody that they don't want to live without? Right? Like, that's really the nature of this conversation. That's the objective. And, hence Lizzie's hosting this event for all of her favorite people, adding value to your lives. So I'm going to begin this conversation sharing with you how I got into the business field, and really why this conversation is happening right now. So I live in Dallas, Texas now, specifically Plano, if you know the suburbs, and I'm from San Diego, California. So I was born and raised out there. And I was going to college in Washington State at Gonzaga University. So I was going to school. And when I was 19 years old, I came back, and my start in business began when I got a job selling Cutco knives house to house for a summer job, right? Any Cutco knife fans out there? Anyone got a Band-Aid to prove it that you actually own some Cutco? Yes, world's sharpest. I got my job as a Cutco salesman back in 2002. And what was so great about that, now I didn't get that job because I love sales or marketing. My degree is in kinesiology, right? So for all intents and purposes, I was going to be a chiropractor or physical therapist, but I needed to pay for school somehow. So I got this job selling Cutco. And I remember, everyone here in business, you remember your early clients, right? Like, you remember those first few people you ever worked with. And there's this one particular woman I always remember. Her name is Cynthia. And Cynthia was a referral from a referral. And I drove out to her house to do a Cutco presentation. And I remember coming into her house and she was super cordial. She offered me a glass of water and, just a snack. And we just sit down. And what was so great, what I love about the sales process is just the building rapport, making the connections, getting to know people. And Cynthia was telling me all about her life. She was telling me about what it was like to be a single mom. She was a single mom who raised two boys from, from babies all the way till they were graduating college and they were about to move out of the house. And so she was a really inspirational woman. She just did life on her own terms. And she was just a really great person to meet. We have this great conversation. I demo my knives, and long story short, she buys a modest size set of Cutco knives, which was nice. What I didn't expect was about a week later, I get a phone call and it's Cynthia, and she's very frantic. And she says, "Hey, John, I hate to do this, but I need you to cancel my order." And I was shocked because at that point in my career, no one had ever canceled anything on me. And all of y'all in real estate here, you know what this call is like, right? That call from the buyer who says they have to pull out because of some reason, or it's the investor or they're selling the family property, but they can't let it go because if it's a sentimental reason. We've all been in those experiences where we're under contract, we're in a deal, and then it falls apart at the last minute. And I don't care what industry you're in, that does not feel good. This is the first time in my life anyone had ever canceled anything on me, and I didn't know what to do. So I just started backpedaling, and I was like, I'm really sorry about that. Is it anything I did? Is it anything I said? Anything I can do or I can say to help you here? And Cynthia says, John, I can't talk about it. I just need to know that you can cancel my order. I said, okay, we'll figure it out. So I call Cutco, we cancel the order, and then I'm in a funk for the rest of the day, right? Like I just can't get over this. And I come home and I'm still living with my parents at the time at 19. My mom sees me, and my mom has like a PhD in being a mom, right? I'm the youngest of 5 children. So she has like done her time. So she can tell when something's wrong with one of her kids, and I'm moping around the house. So she comes up and says, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" And I said, "Mom, you won't believe it. This lady buys a set of Cutco the other day and calls me and cancels her order. Can you believe that?" And I'm like this irate teenager. And she looks at me with a little smirk on her face, like some of you are looking at me right now, which is like, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like this happens in life. Sometimes you buy a t-shirt and it's the wrong size. You have to turn it back to the place you bought it. It's not personal, right? But I was really taking this personal. So she says, "Well, John, I'm curious. Have you ever had somebody that you demoed with that just didn't buy?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time." She says, "Well, why can't you just think of this experience like that one?" And I thought about it and I said, I'm not actually upset, Mom, that I lost the sale. I'm upset that I lost the relationship. It was like this connection that I got to have with this woman that I suddenly don't get to have anymore, right? Like it would be awkward to continue to have a relationship with someone who just canceled the deal with you. And I said, and honestly, Mom, it sucks because I really enjoy this woman. She was super inspirational. She was a single mom. She raised 2 kids on her own. She was just a really cool person to meet. And my mom says, "Well, why don't you tell her that?" I said, "Tell her that? How would you like me to go about that, Mom?" She says, "Well, why don't you write her a thank you card?" A thank you card? Like, what do I possibly have to be grateful for this woman? She just canceled her order. And my mom looks at me and harnesses all the mom wisdom on the planet. And she just looks at me and says, "Well, sweetheart, you're pretty upset. And you can be upset or you can be grateful, but you cannot be both at the same time." And if she had her own little mom mic with her, she could have dropped it, but she didn't. She just kissed me on the forehead and walked away. And kind of just sit there with her words. And it's one of those moments with a parent where you kind of don't want to admit they're probably right. But I had to, right? And so I grabbed some stationery off of her desk and I sit down and I really had to rack my brain. Like, what can I appreciate about this woman? And it took me a little bit of time, but this is what came out. And I said, "Dear Cynthia, I just wanted to reach out and say thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing a young college kid to come all the way out to your house and demo some really sharp knives. And beyond that, I just want to let you know it was wonderful to learn about who you are as a person, learn about your life. I think you're courageous. I love the story about what it's been like to raise your boys on your own. And while I know right now is not the time for you buying any Cutco, I just wanted to say it was wonderful to meet you as a person. Here's my cell phone number if anything changes in the future. Sincerely, Cutco, John." So I sent everything back then was Cutco, John. So I send the card. 2 things happen. One, immediately I feel better, right? It was like all that anger, the frustration, the upset that I had because she canceled her order went away the moment I dropped the letter in the mailbox. The second thing that happened was actually 2 years later. I'm sitting in my college dorm room and I'm working on some homework, and my phone rings and I answer it. And there's this really excited woman on the other line. And all she says is this Cutco John? And I say, yeah, this is Cutco John. Who's this? She says, well, you probably don't remember me, but my name is Cynthia. And I tried to buy some knives from you a couple years ago. And I had to cancel my order. And I was just wondering, I'm ready to buy now. And I was wondering if you can still help me. And I said, oh my gosh, Cynthia, of course I remember you. How can I help you? What do you need? She says, okay, well, I got my catalog. I hope you're ready. So she starts listing off everything she wants. She keeps going and going and going. And this is about to be one of the largest orders of my entire career. I am shocked. And we finish everything up. There's a moment of silence on the phone. And Cynthia asks, John, do you know why I'm calling you today? And I said, I have no idea, but I am very glad that you did. And she says, well, John, the reason I'm calling is because all those years ago, when I had to cancel my order, what I couldn't tell you is that I had just found out that I was extremely sick. I was so sick that I had to leave my job. I was so sick that my boys who had moved out of the house had to move back into the house to take care of me while I went through treatment. And well, the last thing I wanted to do was to cancel my order. I just had no other choice. And I felt terrible about it. And then I got your letter in the mail. And what I saw was you valued me as a human being more than just a customer. And I told myself, when I get healthy one day, I'm going to call this kid and I'm going to buy every damn knife he's selling. And that's what happened. You know, like that was 17 years ago. What a lesson to learn at 19 and 21 years old, to learn how to value people over profit. Because what you learn, what we all learn, is that it's people who bring us our profit. It's human beings behind every real estate transaction, behind every referral. It's not just credit cards and credit scores. It's actually people, just like you, just like me, just like your siblings, your parents, your children. It's humans. And if you're a producer, which I would imagine all of you are who are on this call, you value production, you value your results. And the more we value our results, it's easy to lose sight of the people aspect of what we do. It's easy to get focused on our lead generation, on our phone calls, on our metrics, on our P&L. It's so easy to get focused on what we have to do to grow the business. We lose sight of how do we get in this business in the first place? Who drives our business in the first place? And this became like just an area of study for me for years of like, how do we do this on a scalable level? How do we create these indelible relationships with clients that they want to stick around with us for years and years to come? And it was a few years later, but we actually got started our own business in the gifting space, right? So my company is called Mr. Thank You. Inadvertently, I get called Mr. Thank You a lot, but it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys ever on Instagram, like my friend always said, you know, hey, there's a moment when like your Instagram name becomes your real name, right? So everyone calls me Mr. Thank You. It's actually my company name. My real name is John Israel. So we started Mr. Thank You as a strategic gifting company. So we actually help people say thank you for a living. We do a lot of work in the real estate and mortgage space. We do gifts for people to give out at the end of a transaction. It's not why I'm here to talk to you guys today. We just help people say thank you for a living. And I ran the business for about 10 years. We were killing it. We were doing great. I was still living in Southern California at the time. And at that moment, this is in 2016, I had arguably everything one could want, right? For me, we had bought our first house. I got married, we started our family, we had our first child, and we were making great money. And truth be told, that's what I wanted. That's what I said I wanted for myself. Yet I was completely unhappy, and I was very much so over my business. Any guys ever been over it, by the way? Over in your business, over dealing with buyers, over the conversations, over the issues, right? I was just over it. And at the same time, I was a sole provider for my family, so I had to kind of figure this out. And our business had kind of plateaued. We were doing well, but we weren't growing anymore. So I said, okay, I need to figure a way to accelerate our business and to get through this rough patch. So I hired a coach, and my coach, on our very first session, he asked me a really good question. I'll invite all of you to answer this question for yourselves. And he just said, John, what's your vision? Like, why do you exist? Why is the world better or different because Mr. Thank You is on the planet? And it was a good question. And it was a good question that I didn't have the answer to, because if I was being honest, the purpose of my business was money. My purpose of our business was financial gain, because we had goals and things that we wanted to achieve. And do you think that our clients could feel that? Absolutely. Simon Sinek has one of the greatest TED Talks out there. And I love what he says about your purpose and your why. He says, people don't care what you do, they care why you do it. And in business, people don't buy what you sell, they buy why you're selling it. So why are people buying from you? And it really got me thinking. And so I said, okay, we got to work on our vision. So I went through this weekend long retreat. We're working on our visions. And I came out with this statement that I thought really encompassed why we exist. And I said, Mr. Thank You is all about elevating the level of gratitude on the planet. And it's one of those, when you write it down, you look at it, you get the goosies, right? The goosebumps. You're like, oh yeah, like that's why we're here. That's why we exist. But there was a problem. And that problem shows up inside of a quote by a guy named Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it's one of those quotes that when you hear it, you don't get to unhear it. And what he says is, excuse me, I cannot hear what you are saying because who you are speaks so loudly. And what I love and simultaneously don't love about that quote is that it challenges us to be consistent with our word. It challenges us to not just say, here's what I value, here's what I care about, but to literally prove it in your behavior. And if at that time in 2016, you went out and asked 100 people who know John Israel, like, hey, what do you know about this guy? Like, they'd probably say some nice things, like driven or successful. But they wouldn't use the word grateful. They wouldn't use the word appreciative. They probably wouldn't even use the word happy to describe who I was. So how can that be? How can I be this guy who says he's about elevating gratitude on the planet, but I don't embody it in my life at all? And so I was also reading a really great book at the time called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Really great book. And he has an excellent concept in there called a Keystone Habit. And a Keystone Habit is a singular habit you have that has a trickle-down positive effect in multiple areas of your life, right? And the example he gives is working out, right? So working out, number one, is a really good habit. You're going to be healthier. You're going to feel better because you're working out. Well, secondly, because you're working out, you're going to need to drink a lot more water. Well, turns out drinking a lot of water is a good habit. Third, because you're working out, your body's more fatigued, so you sleep better at night. So there's all these positive trickle-down benefits from this one singular habit called working out. So I thought, well, I wonder what kind of a habit like that I could have around gratitude, something that would have that same trickle-down effect in my life. So I was talking to my coach about it. He said, well, a really simple question. What's an experience you can remember feeling the highest level of gratitude? What do you think I thought about? That moment all those years ago with Cynthia, when I got to write her that letter, and I just realized the impact it had on me, but also the impact it had on her. So I thought, well, what if I do something like that? What if I make a commitment every day for a year to handwrite thank you cards, something like that? He's like, I think you're onto something, but let's get really clear. Like, let's set some metrics, some rules around this project. So I'm going to share my screens now, or my screen. So these are the rules of what became known as the Mr. Thank You project. So this is October 10th of 2016. So here were the rules. Number one is I made a commitment to handwrite 5 thank you cards every day for 365 consecutive days. They had to be handwritten, couldn't be a text or a video or an email. Not that those are bad, but for me, I wanted it to be a handwritten card. Second rule was every single day resets at 0. Okay, so this means I couldn't write like 15 cards on one day and skip 3 days. Because if something's a true habit, you literally do it every single day, Monday through Sunday, rain or shine, no matter what. So I wanted it to be a habit I do every day. So every day reset at 0. The next rule is I could write a max of 3 cards per any one person. Now, partially the reason I did that was because I know myself, and if I couldn't think of someone to write a card to, I'd probably write like the 75th thank you card to my mom, which who knows, maybe she would have appreciated that. Any moms in here would appreciate 75 thank you cards from your children? All right. Well, I thought even if I do that, they're going to lose their luster. They're going to lose their importance. So I wanted to look for different people every day to appreciate. Now, the fourth rule was kind of an interesting one. My coach says, hey, John, I love the idea of this project, but let me ask you this. What's the accountability, right? Like what happens if or when you miss a day? I was like, okay, good question. And I said, okay, for every day that I miss, I will donate $100 to charity. I felt pretty good about that. And he looks back at me and he says, add a 0. And I said, hang on a second. You want me to donate $1,000 to charity for not writing 5 thank you cards in a day? That's crazy. He says, well, I don't want you to have to donate any money, but let me ask you this. How likely is it you're probably going to donate $100 or several $100s to charities anyways throughout this year? And I said, good point. We kind of do that with our tithing process. He says, okay, well, then you're giving yourself a way out. If what's at stake every single day is $1,000, how many days are you going to miss? Well, what would you say in that scenario, right? 0, none. I mean, there's no way you're going to miss a day, right? So he says, all right, well, then what would you like to do? So the 4th and final rule of the Mr. Thank You Project was $1,000 to charity for any and every day that I missed writing my 5 thank you cards. And if you haven't done the math on this, 5 cards times 365 days is 1,825 letters of appreciation. Now, you don't need to know everything that happens to realize that when you make any high-level commitment like that in your life, whether it be around your business and your prospecting, whether it be around your health, whether it be around your relationship, if you make a commitment every single day to do something that honors your highest values, you're going to experience change. You're going to be a different person at the end of this year. And that's exactly what happened. And as I go into sharing with you some of the stories, so there's a whole lot that happened that year. I'm only going to share probably about 3, maybe 4 stories from that whole project. And I'm really cherry picking the ones that are most relevant for you, most relevant to your business. And as I go through some of these stories, I have a caution for you I don't want you to look at this from the space of like at the end that you reach out to Lizzie and you say, hey, Lizzie, thanks so much for having John speak. He was like super inspirational, right? Like, that's good. I appreciate if you get that feedback, but really to get the most out of our conversation today, I want you to ask yourself these questions. How does this apply to me? Right? What of this can we apply to our business, to our process, to our systems, so that we can make an intentional practice of developing thriving relationships with our clients, with our teams, right? Because if you do that, you're going to get something really special out of this conversation. All right. You guys want to hear what happened? I can't hear you, so I'm going to assume you said yes. All right, let's go dive into see what actually happened with this crazy project. I'm going to fast forward to day 3. Day 3 was a really interesting day. So just to set the stage a little bit, we still lived in Southern California, but we actually got an offer to move our business to Dallas, Texas. So we were mid-escrow closing on our home in Texas. My wife was 8 months pregnant. We were moving our business across the country. This is the worst time to start a project like this, but I also think that most things that you really want to do or should do with your life, there's no perfect time to it. You just kind of have to do it. So I was still living in Southern California, and I'm boarding a plane in Los Angeles to fly from LA to the East Coast. And as I board this plane, people often ask an interesting question. They say, hey, John, I love this project. It sounds really cool, but like, who are you writing these cards to? Like, I don't even know 1,825 people I'd possibly write a handwritten thank you card to. And it's a good question, because what you would learn is if you make it an intentional practice to practice active gratitude comparatively with passive, and I'll distinguish the two. Active gratitude is when you make it an outward effort to tell somebody what they mean to you, to tell somebody your gratitude, whether you write it in a note, you tell them in a conversation, you send them a video. It has a significant different impact than passive gratitude. Passive gratitude is what most of us are used to, right? Grab your journal, write down the 3 or 4 things that you're grateful for the day. And by the way, I do that myself, so I don't think it's a bad thing to do that. But the whole thing is, there is a study by Dr. Martin Seligman, who's the founding researcher on positive psychology. And he showed that active gratitude, when people practice active gratitude versus passive, have a 6 times higher experience of gratitude than those who just write about it in a journal. So if you make it an active effort, you're going to experience things on a different scale, but also you're going to be looking for people to appreciate. And when that becomes how you look at the world, everything starts to change. So I'm boarding this plane and I'm thinking about who I'm going to write a card to that day. And the first people I think about are the pilots, right? Because I fly all the time. And every time I take off, I say a little prayer for safe travel. And you know what? They've delivered 100% of the time, so I can appreciate that. But I thought, man, I've never actually taken the formal time to appreciate the pilots on my plane. Let's do that today. So I walk on the plane and I go up to the flight attendant and I say, excuse me, what are the names of the pilots? And I very quickly learn that is a strange question. She's never been asked this before, so she gets a little weirded out. And then I have to go, oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to write them a thank you card. And she softens up a little bit, but still uncomfortably gives me the names of the pilots. So I take them and I sit down at my seat, and I was like, okay, that was a little bit more awkward than I expected, but let's keep going with this. So I have these cards laid out. I got the pilots' names listed on there. And then I realized I have a problem, which is I don't know these people. We've never met. How do you thank somebody that you don't even know, you've never spent any time with? And what I loved about this project, I love to learn where language comes from. And the word, by the way, everyone in real estate, you're going to love the word appreciate that much more when you learn where it comes from. So the word appreciate comes from the Latin word appreciare, which literally translates to appraise or to set the value of a thing. Right. So when you think about it, right, before you can sell a property or before the loan can fund, what do you need to have? You need to have an appraisal. Now, someone would argue a good appraisal. That's not what we're going to talk about today, right? But you need an appraisal. And have you ever asked yourself the question, what is an actual appraisal? And what it is there's an individual who goes to a property with either a clipboard or a computer, and they've got all these questions that they're asking. They're asking like, what's the condition of the roof? Right? Is there any pest or termite damage? What's the foundation like? What are comps for other properties like this going for in the area? They go through all of these questions. They hand you a sheet of paper that says, I deem this property to be worth X dollars. Now, how do you apply that principle to a human being? And what I learned in that plane flight is that you just become curious and you ask yourself questions like, what is this person's life like? What do they really care about? What actually matters to them? What are their biggest goals? What are the biggest things that keep them up late at night? And what I learned as I asked myself these questions is I started to understand who these people were, even though we'd never met. And what I started to realize is there was actually a framework to this. There was a framework of how we make human connections and how we learn to appreciate other people. I'm going to share that with you today. We call this the whole human appraisal, right? The whole human appraisal. How do you learn to truly appreciate another human being? So I'm going to give you a framework called the VOW framework of human connection here. So the V, and actually before I do this, I want you to take a moment. I want you to think of 6 people. 3 people that are the most important to you in your personal life, and 3 people who are the most important to you in your business life. And I want you to write their names down. All right, 3 people that mean the most to you in your personal life, 3 people that mean the most to you in your business life. Write their names down. And the reason I want you to write their names down is because as I share with you these insights about how we make a really meaningful connection, I'm curious how many of these frameworks actually apply to your best relationships. Because wouldn't it be interesting to know those things as we go into building future relationships, the new people that we meet, the new people that we add into our team? So let's dive into it. So the V stands for values. If we want to appreciate somebody and their model of the world, we have to know the answer to these questions. What does this person care about? What really matters to them? And when you think about people that you love spending time with, it's probably people that you have a common or shared values. You have kids the same age, right? Maybe you like the same sports teams. Maybe you're into the same music, right? You like to travel to the same places. When we find people with common and shared values as us, we love connecting with them. We love spending time with them. And it's easy to find those things naturally. But when we meet new people, when we're engaging with our team, how conscious and aware are we of what they care about and what actually matters to them? The second piece here, the O stands for outcomes, which is how do they win? What are their goals in life? And what's interesting is on the business side, I bet many of you, if you put people down there, the reason you have some of those individuals on your business side is because that you really enjoy those relationships because they help you achieve your goals. They help you accomplish what matters to you. And it could be a referral partner. It could be your assistant. It could be a buyer's agent, right? It could be somebody on your team or somebody to you that really helps you achieve your meaningful goals. So the interesting question, right? So I was speaking at an event with Todd Duncan. Todd Duncan's a coach in the mortgage space. And he asked a really good question. He said, do you know the top 3 goals of over the next 5 years of your team? The people on your team, do you know the top 3 goals over the next 5 years of their life? Why is that relevant to know? Because if you don't know that and they meet somebody who has a similar opportunity or offer as you do, but that person asks those questions and gets aware of what this person wants out of life and what they're trying to accomplish, and they can position what they do in service and of value to those goals, what's going to happen? we're going to lose that person because we weren't relevant to what matters to this individual. We weren't helping them achieve their meaningful goals. So it's a really valuable thing because we love those who help us achieve our goals, but how conscious and aware are we of other people's goals and in how we can show up and serve them? Now, the third piece here I thought was really interesting. I'm big on social media, especially on Facebook. Everything you can find me is at the Mr. Thank You. And I went on social media and I posted a question to my Facebook community. And I said, how do you know somebody is a good friend? And I was really shocked at the answers because everything kept pointing back to this last piece. And what everyone was saying is, I know somebody is a good friend because they showed up during a moment of weakness. They showed up during a moment of pain. So an interesting question, if you want to learn to really appreciate somebody's model of the world and appreciate their lives, is to ask yourself this question: where does it hurt? What are their biggest fears? What are their biggest concerns? Because if we can show up in our relationship to serve people and to take away their pain, it's one of the greatest emotions that people can feel, is a relief of pressure, a relief of pain. And the reason why I think this is relevant is because as we grow in our business, we grow in our production, we typically just focus on the success. We focus on what's going well or what we're trying to accomplish. And we lose sight of asking the tough questions like, how are you doing? How are you really doing right now? Because the more we can dig into those things, the more we will know how to serve people based on their biggest challenges. Values, outcomes, weaknesses. I'm curious, as you look at that list of those people you wrote down, how many of those relationships really actually fit inside of this framework, that you have similar, common, or shared values, you or they help each other achieve meaningful goals and outcomes, and you at one time or another have served each other during a moment of weakness or pain. Moving forward, it's something to be aware of as we're building future relationships. So I'm on this plane and I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I got to write these thank you cards, right? We're now in the air. So here's what eventually comes out for these pilots. And I said, dear pilot, I know it might seem strange to receive a thank you card from a passenger, but as I boarded the plane today, I realized how much I missed my family. And then I realized this is what you do every day for your job. I can't imagine how many birthdays, anniversaries, or special events you've sacrificed for your work, not to mention the hundreds, if not thousands of hours you spent in the cockpit training for your job, because nobody becomes a pilot by accident. All of that to have some bad weather, a slightly bumpy landing, and then have people complain about it. So whether you hear it enough or not, I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and everybody on our flight. So I fold that card up and I write two very similar cards. Plane lands in the next destination. Pilots are still in the cockpit. So as I'm exiting the plane, I get to physically hand them their thank you cards. And then I jump on another flight and basically do this again with two additional pilots. Now, this is where it got interesting. I don't normally do this, but at that time, I only had my personal business stationery with me, which had my name, cell phone number, and email physically printed on the cards. This is what got crazy. Within 24 hours of landing in Philadelphia, 2 out of those 4 pilots personally contacted me to say thank you for the card that they received. One went on to say, you know, John, in my 12 years of flying, I have never received a thank you card from a passenger. And I thought, that's crazy. How is it even possible? These guys with such a big, significant, important job, and no one's even taking the time just to say thank you to them? Now I thought, geez, if that's the case for these guys with such a big, important job, what about everybody else in their jobs, in their careers, in their businesses, in their relationships? I thought there was a huge appreciation deficit in the world. And it's so funny because in business, we're always thinking about ROI. We're always thinking about what's the return on this investment of time, money, energy, whatever it is. And I'm going to ask you an opposite question. What's the cost of taking people for granted? What's it cost in your business? What's it cost in your relationships, in your marriage, whatever? And I think we'd all agree there's a huge impact when we take people for granted. So I'm thinking about all these things, and then we land, we're in Philadelphia, we're doing our thing, and I really want to kind of hone this together and I say, well, what if this is applicable? How do I take this home? What do I apply to my own life and our business? And here's what it comes down to. If we want to make more meaningful connections, here's how we do it. Everything begins with curiosity. Curiosity is the precursor to appreciation, and appreciation is the birthplace of empathy. With empathy, we develop compassion, and with compassion, we have the ability to literally connect with anyone. And it's interesting because as we're here together. And if we were, if I got to ask all of you individually and to say, hey, in general, would you say that you're an appreciative person? And most of us would be like, yeah, like I am an appreciative person. Like I appreciate others who voted for the same person I voted for. Like I appreciate those that root for the same sports team as I do. I really appreciate those that see the world the way that I see it. The challenge with that is that there's a lot more people in the world who've experienced it completely differently than you have. And if we want to grow our businesses, we want to make more meaningful connections, it begins with curiosity. Curiosity, be curious first, critical second, because it's so easy to be the opposite. So easy to focus on what's wrong, what people are doing wrong, what's wrong with our business, what's wrong with our economy. But if we focus on just being curious about what's great about others, what's great about the environment that we're in, the opportunity that we have to sell real estate right now in this market, while I know it's crazy, there's so many good things coming out of it. But when we can focus on curiosity first, it transforms the relationships that are closest to us. So this was day 3, right? You can imagine like 362 more days of this project. And, I'm not going to proclaim that every single day was as like prolific and legendary as day 3 of the project, but it was a really interesting year. And as I was kind of going back to normal life, I had to put the mirror in front of my face and say, hey, John, like I hear you sound great, great philosophies here, but like, how are you applying this? Like, what are you doing in your life with your own people that matter to you? And I don't know about you, anyone here notice that like the people closest to us are the ones that are the easiest to take for granted? Anyone ever notice that? Right? I know that for myself. And this is my family. We have 4 kids now. So this is actually during the Mr. Thank You project. We only had 2 at the time. So this is my wife, Monica. We've been married for 10 years and she's my rock. She's always been supportive of me. And 3 months had gone by in the project and I hadn't written her a single thank you card. And I was like, you know what? I got to practice what I preach here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I time block like an hour in my day to appreciate Monica, to like write her the world's greatest love letter. So I sit down, she doesn't even get a thank you card. She gets like a sheet of paper, right? So I sit down and I go through multiple drafts, just like trying to like get the perfect words and get everything right. And it takes me an hour to literally write this letter. And I hold it up and it's like, this is a work of art, right? Like this is going to be the next Nicholas Sparks book right here. That was a Notebook reference for the 5 of you who got that joke. Anyways, I was really proud of this letter. I wanted her to get it. I wanted her to experience how much I appreciate her and how much I love her. So I wanted to leave it where I knew she would find it, which was next to her coffee, right? So we have a routine in our family around coffee where I wake up first, I make a French press of coffee, I drink half of it, then pour the other half for her to drink when she wakes up. So we had just in this time moved to Dallas, Texas. We had just landed. Our house was still kind of in boxes. We don't even have furniture yet. We had 1 car. Life was kind of in shambles. So coffee is one of the few things that we could rely on every single day. So I left her letter next to her coffee. And I go out to see my clients for the day. And I am feeling like the greatest husband in the world, right? Like I just totally made her day. And I'm checking my phone every 5 minutes. I'm like, did she get it yet? No. How about now? Right. And I just keep checking my phone and she doesn't say anything. I think, okay, no big deal. She probably wants to tell me in person. It's kind of a personal thing. So I'm sure she'll say something when I get home. So I go see my clients. I come home for the day. We have dinner. She doesn't say anything. Okay. We put the kids to bed. She doesn't say anything. We go to bed. Well, she falls asleep. I can't fall asleep. I am now on my side of the bed fuming, thinking like, are you kidding me? I literally just pour my heart out in this letter and crickets. That's what I get back. Now I had to check myself for a moment and ask myself a really important question, which is, what was the intention? Was the intention to get a response? Or was the intention to actually just simply express gratitude and appreciation for someone who really mattered to me? And if I was being honest, how I was behaving was I wanted to get a reaction. I wanted to get the affirmation. I wanted to have her say, oh, you're so good, John. Thank you so much for that. But that wasn't the intention. That wasn't the point. So I had to honestly tell myself, you know what? She's under a lot of stress. She's under a lot of pressure. We just had a brand new baby. We just moved across the country. Just give her some grace. Let this one go. So I go to bed. Something interesting happens the next day. So I wake up and I start going through the routine and I'm making the coffee and I grab the coffee container and I realize, oh shoot, we have run out of coffee. Wasn't a huge deal for me. I have the car and I'm going to go drive to Starbucks on my way out of town to go meet with some clients. So I'll just pick up some coffee on the way out. So I'm starting to exit the house and I get to the front door and I hear our bedroom door open and my wife is walking down the stairs and I look up and she is dead tired right? She's just got an infant in one arm, a toddler clung to her leg, and she's at the top of the stairs and she says, "Oh, sweetheart, before you go, is the coffee ready?" "Oh, yeah, about that. We actually ran out of coffee, sweetheart." Have you ever looked directly into someone's eyes while they were planning to murder you? I haven't either, but I can't imagine it was too different than how my wife was staring at me at that moment, which was like, I just ruined her life, right? And I felt terrible, but I needed to leave. So I was like, "I'm sorry, honey, I gotta go, bye." And I just get in my car and I drive over to Starbucks and I order my drink and I'm in the drive-through line. And like, you gotta understand though, I wanted to do the right thing. And what's the right thing? Buy some coffee, bring it back to her at the house. But you have to understand, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, huge Metroplex, and I'm on one side of the city. My appointment's on an hour away on the other side. And if I was like 5 minutes late, then I would hit the worst traffic and I would be 15 minutes late to see my client. And I just couldn't do that. So you can understand the pickle that I was in. And I'm sitting there in the drive-through line. And all I can think is, how can you do that? How can you literally write this woman an undying love letter telling her nothing in the world matters more to you than her, and then today you leave her completely hanging? So I pull the drive-through, ask the barista, I say, "Can you make it two?" She makes me a second cup of coffee. I drive backwards home. I leave the cup of coffee on the doorstep with a simple note. And here's all the note says. It says, "Monica, thank you for working hard to take care of our boys. You are always worth a hot cup of coffee." I drive down the street. I send her a little text message. I say, "Come outside." She comes outside. She sees it. She takes a picture of it. She posts it on Instagram. She says, "Oh my gosh, I have the best husband in the world." She's sending me text messages. "Kissy face, kissy face. I love you so much. You saved my life today. I can't wait to see you when you get home tonight." And I am now in bumper to bumper traffic. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Didn't yesterday I write you the world's greatest love letter and you didn't even say anything? And today I leave you 2 sentences and a cup of coffee, and this is what did it for you? And you know what I said? I said, "I'll take it. I'll take the win for the team." Because when you're a husband, you take every win that you can get, right? So I go off and see my clients for the day. It works out great. I come home. We have dinner with the family. We put the kids to bed. And there's that little time, if you have children, that time when the kids are finally asleep and the adults just get to sit there quietly and drink a glass of wine. And my wife looks at me and she says, "Sweetheart, I have to tell you something. I did get your letter yesterday, and it was very sweet. And I know that you love me. But sometimes I just like when you show it to me. When you show it to me." That was the lesson I needed to learn that day. Because it doesn't matter what you say, because your actions speak so loudly. It doesn't make sense. You don't get to tell somebody, "I love you. Nothing in the world means more to me than you," and then leave them hanging the next day. It doesn't make sense to tell your clients, "We value customer service and responsiveness," and then not respond when they got problems with their deal. It doesn't make sense to tell your team how much you appreciate them and value their hard work, and then berate them for their mistake on a file. We don't get to say one thing, act differently, and not expect an impact in the relationship. This changed everything for us. It changed our business model. It changed our customer experience process. It changed my marriage, changed our relationship with my kids. It changed everything. And my encouragement to you is to ask yourself that same question. Is my behavior consistent with my words? Is my behavior consistent with my words? Because really, your behavior sets the rules. Your behavior sets rules. People say these are the rules, but really how you behave is what sets the rules. Here's the last part on that. Loyalty. If everyone says they want loyalty, they want more loyalty, here's how you create it. Loyalty is often based in inconvenience. Think about that for a moment. I didn't need to come back to my wife and bring her that coffee, and she would have understood. She wouldn't have been mad at me for not bringing her back the coffee because she knew I had to go see my clients. It wasn't even a big deal. if we want people to be loyal to us, we have to demonstrate our loyalty to them. And oftentimes that's through inconvenience, through doing things that take more time, that take more energy, that take more effort. But in doing that, we build these indelible relationships that people don't want to live without. So you're starting to see that this whole thank you project thing is looking to be a lot different than just writing a whole bunch of thank you cards to complete strangers. This was changing my outlook on life. This was changing our business process. And I got really shocked. I was offered to give a chance to share this story at an entrepreneurial event. I was in my coaching program that I was in, and it really like just kind of took hold with a lot of people's hearts. And it got shared with someone to a news editor. And so then it got picked up on ABC News and then Fox News and then Good Morning America. And all this publicity was happening. And I'm like, man, I'm just this local small business person, just like everyone here on this call, suddenly getting all this awareness for just being an appreciative person. Like, that sounds crazy. But then I started getting letters from complete strangers saying, hey man, I heard about your project. I love this. I'm starting my own gratitude project. And I started to see like this is going to have an impact in the world beyond just my own life and my own business. And so I wanted to see what we could do to take it up a notch, right? And so I had one more major story, and then we'll start to wrap it up for today. And this was a moment I was actually boarding a plane. This time I was going from the East Coast to the West Coast on this was a solo flight. So there's no stops. It was like a 6 or 7 hour flight in the air. And so as I boarded the plane, I realized like, hey, this is a really fun project, but I'm really the only one who gets to experience it, right? Like, I wonder if we could pull this off with an entire plane of people. So we board the plane, and I sit down, I get the names of the pilots and the flight attendants, and I write 5 different thank you cards, one to each of those people. And I sit down and I put all these cards in a folder, and I put like a really short note, just like a really simple, like, hey, thanks for all you do, kind of a note. And I put them in a folder, and in the folder, I put a sticky note addressed to all the passengers of the plane. And I said, dear passengers, you're invited to participate in something called the Mr. Thank You Project, where we send love, gratitude, and appreciation to people who are undervalued in what they do. Inside of this folder are thank you cards for the pilots and flight attendants of this flight. We invite you to participate by writing a note of appreciation or simply signing the cards. If you don't want to participate, that's fine. Just hand them to the next person. Whoever receives these in the last seat in the last row, return them to the woman in the red dress in seat 32C. That was my neighbor. She didn't know I put that. But I did it because I wanted this to be completely anonymous. I wanted this to be a give to the world. I don't want to take any credit for it. So I take the folder and I bring it to the front of this plane, and there's these 2 really cute elderly women sitting in the front, and I hand them the folder, but I have to kind of explain what's going on here. And it probably looked really weird because they were pretty old and there was like a plane engine behind them. So I was like yelling the instructions. So I'm like, inside here are thank you cards, fill them out and pass them down. And the lady takes the folder from me. She's like, okay, sweetheart. So I go back to my seat, and I'm in like the direct middle of this plane. And have you ever made a decision that in the moment you thought was a good decision, and then the moment later, you immediately regretted that decision? Right? Like that was this moment, because I thought in the moment, I was like, oh yeah, this sounds cool. People are going to be all about this. And then I sit down and I start to think, John, like, you've done some cool stuff with gratitude, but you might have crossed a line here, right? Like, you're asking complete strangers to say thank you to complete strangers. Someone might get upset about this. They ring their call bell and they're like, who did this? I'm not signing anything. And then they're looking around for who started it. And then they find out that it was me. And then when we land at the next destination, TSA is there to arrest me and take me away. And I'm never able to fly ever again, right? This is what I'm thinking about the entire flight. And I'm in the direct middle of this plane. What makes it worse is that like 30 minutes go by and I don't see any cards being passed around. And I'm like, man, maybe we kind of went a little overboard, but win some, you lose some. And then 5 minutes later, I see the cards pass over someone's shoulder in the 3rd row. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is actually working. This is great. So the cards keep going, and about halfway through the flight, they land on my tray table. And I open up the folder, and it looks amazing. There's signatures, there's notes from passengers, and I was like, this looks fantastic, but we've got a problem. We're going to run out of room. We don't have enough room on these cards. We got another half of this plane. So I grab some sticky notes, I shove them inside. I say, if you run out of room, write on these. So I continue them down. They keep going and going. It's getting close to landing. So I get out of my seat to see where the cards are. And I notice they're in the 2nd to last row. And I was like, okay, we're totally going to pull this off. So I go back to my seat, and the pilot immediately calls for landing so nobody can get up. So I said, okay, no big deal. I'll just get the cards as we land. So we land the next destination and people start getting off the plane. And everyone's getting off. I'm the only one like in my seat still, just like with a big smile on my face. I'm like, all right, who's got my cards? Who's got them? Woman in the red dress, she's gone. She has no idea whether she had the greatest flight of her life, why everyone was smiling at her. She's like, man, everyone was really nice on this flight, right? So I'm waiting there, and the plane's almost completely empty, and no one hands me the cards. And I start to freak out a little bit. But then I hear over the intercom, they say, all passengers who are heading to Oakland, please remain in your seats, and we'll be boarding the new passenger shortly. So I said, okay, so they're going to be boarding other passengers. There's maybe some still people in the back of the plane. So I go to the back of the plane and I look, and there is actually a gentleman in the last seat in the last row. So I go up to him and I say, oh, excuse me, sir. Did you get a brown folder with some thank you cards inside of it? And he looks at me and says, oh, yeah. I handed that off to the flight attendant. And I was like, man, I was kind of hoping to do that, but no big deal. So I go over to the flight attendant and I say, hey, did you get a folder from the guy in the last seat in the last row? The flight attendant says, no. I say, no. He said when you were walking by before landing, he handed you a folder. And the pilot says, oh, that's right. When I was coming by to pick up the trash. Yeah, so I threw it away. Why? Are you kidding me? You threw it away? And he starts to freak out. He's like, geez, what was inside of that thing? I said, that had hand-signed thank you cards from everybody on this plane. And the flight attendant's like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, where are they? And he points to the bottom of the stairs where the trash truck is about to drive away. And I say, we have to get those cards. So he runs down the stairs. He taps the trash guy on the shoulder. He's got to take off his headphones, explain what's going on. Trash guy gets off of the truck. They start pulling off bags of trash from who knows what plane, by the way, and they are ripping them open and rifling through shoulder deep in other people's garbage. And I'm at the top of the stairs and I'm thinking, this is not happening. This is not happening. This is not happening. And they're rifling through other people's garbage. And he reaches in one more time and he finds it. But it's soaking wet. Just water, wine, coffee, use your imagination, right? And he walks back up the stairs with like this gratitude coffin in his hands. And he hands it to me. And he says, I'm so sorry. And I take the cards and I say, this does not just happen right now. And I open the folder and the cards are in perfect condition. Not only are they in perfect condition, literally every square centimeter is signed by someone on that plane. Here's actually a picture of those cards, by the way. Outside of seeing my children born, easily one of the most beautiful things that I'd ever seen. Because it was literally a group of complete strangers saying thank you to complete strangers. I snap this picture, folding up the cards, putting sticky notes in them, I'm handing them out. I'm like, this is for you. I'm like holding up this plate at this point, right? So I'm like, this is for you. This is for you. Trying to get off the plane. And then this guy taps me on the shoulder and he says, hey, was that you? Are you the Mr. Thank You guy? I said, yeah. Why? He says, that is the coolest thing that I've ever done on a plane. He's like, what you don't know is that my son, my 8-year-old son, was with me today, and he's been having a really hard time being bullied at school. And when the folder landed on my tray table and I got to read what it was about, we got to have a conversation about friendship and about kindness and about how we treat people regardless of how they treat us back. And I just want to say thank you for facilitating that conversation today, because that wasn't going to happen. So I received that. I get off the plane. Literally takes me a couple of days to recover from this experience. And it took me a while to think about what are the lessons, what's the takeaway. And here's what I'll wrap with. Some of the greatest decisions that you're going to make with your life don't make sense. Some of the greatest things that you do, the greatest relationships that you have, the greatest clients you work with, sometimes the greatest things that happen to you, in the moment of that decision, it doesn't make sense. Because in the moment, like if you look at on paper, sometimes it doesn't make sense to value people over profit. Sometimes we have to make decisions based on the profitability of the company or the business. And we have to say no to certain things. But when we learn to value people over profit, and we learn that sometimes it logically doesn't make sense and we don't do it, here's the thing. We don't do it because it makes sense. We do it because it's right. We do it because it honors our values. And that's what we learned. And if I could bring it down to one thing, that's what it was. This year for me, yes, it was about gratitude, but really, I'm just a guy. I'm just a person just like everybody on this call. I'm a small business owner. And I just got really clear about my values. I got really clear about what I cared about. And I chose to live them out every single day for a year, and it changed my life. So fast forward through, we finished the year-long project. I wrote my 1,825 thank you cards. I did miss one day. Kind of interesting experience. You can ask about it later if you want, and we do Q&A here in a moment. I finished the project and we evolved, right? I think every business evolves in the relevant service of their clients. And so we started hearing about all these people who wanted to participate and start their own thank you projects. So we built out MrThankYou.com, where you can actually go there and you can start your own gratitude project. And actually, my challenge to you, if you're watching this on Zoom, go to MrThankYou.com/30, MrThankYou.com/30, type that in, and you can download a 30-day challenge. I don't think people should do what I did. It was really hard. It was ridiculous. But it was life-changing. And you don't need to do that. You could simply do one card a day, every day for 30 days. I think you notice a huge difference in your life and your business. And that's my encouragement. That's my challenge to you. So in kind of wrapping up today, I'm going to put my contact info here on the screen. So in case you need to reach out to me for anything, our mission now, like I said, is to elevate the level of gratitude on the planet by inspiring 74 million thank you cards written around the world. And how many of you on this call so far, since we've been talking, have thought of at least one person that you know you need to write a thank you card to? Who's thought of at least one person? All right, so my encouragement, my challenge to you today is to write that card and to send it, because 6 months into the project, I remember getting a phone call from my best friend, Nick. He was the best man at my wedding. We grew up together. His parents were like my parents. And unfortunately, in this moment, he was calling me to tell me that his dad had passed away. Just terrible news. Nobody loves to hear that. What made it worse was I'd actually written Nick's dad a thank you card during the project, and I hadn't sent it yet. It was literally sitting on my desk with his name on it without an address. And while I'm not happy that that happened, I am grateful for the lesson, which is the urgency of this project, which is the urgency of practicing active gratitude, because you never know when it's going to matter to somebody. And you also never know when your last opportunity to do that is. So that's my challenge to you today. Go to MrThankYou.com/30. Download the 30-day challenge. If you want to learn more, of course, I can only share so many stories from the project. There is a book that I got to write. So it's called the Mr. Thank You Project. Go to Amazon.com. You can buy it there. If you want to get copies for clients, if you want to make these as gifts for them, we do run a gifting company, shameless plug, right? You can actually go to MrThankYou.com. You can buy them in bulk. We've got a bulk discount thing there. You can go to our shop and you can order them in quantities of 10 for 50% off. But beyond that, I want to do one last thing here as we wrap. So let's do this here. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to get out of here. So Lizzie Hofer hosted this thing. Who here on the call loves some Lizzie Hofer? Who loves some Lizzie? Okay. So right now, I want you to open the chat box and I want you to type in what you love and appreciate about Lizzie Hofer. Take a second, open the chat box. What do you love and appreciate about Lizzie Hofer? Take a second. Go ahead and do that. Authentic, real. Inspirational, sweetest, wonderful, classy. Lizzie, you seeing all this? All right. So
we all know I'm a sucker, so I'm like totally crying. Anyway, guys, to wrap this up, John, you were freaking amazing, just so you know. And I just want to really let you guys know how grateful I am for all of you guys who are my partners who've helped build our business. This really just reminded me of what we do and how I just need to be way more grateful for all of you guys. Seriously.
Love it. Thank you, Lizzie. Hey, I want to be conscious and aware of our time here. It is, we're right around the 30-minute mark. We committed to an hour here for you guys. If you got to go, you're welcome to head out. I did reserve some time here for some Q&A. There's usually questions people have after this. And so we'd love, if you have some questions, you can jot them in the chat box. I also love real questions from actual people who have voices. You can unmute yourself. And you are welcome to ask any questions. Or Lizzie, if you have any.
Yeah, I have, hold on, I have some. So I can't imagine that this was easy, right? Like, I just listening to you, I got like super emotional. What do you think, well, what were some of the challenges in just executing this every single day?
Yeah, well, so kind of like on a logistical side, it wasn't as hard writing the cards as it was sending all of the cards, because when you write, like literally for the sake of like finding everybody's address, and like that was a logistical thing that was difficult. I actually still have about 100 cards that I never sent out because they just like they lost their timing, their time sensitivity. But anywho, so that was one hard part. But here was the true hard part, which is, and it kind of goes to a question, which is, how do you be grateful when you don't want to be? Right. And a great example of that was, so I mentioned going to Gonzaga University, which some of you guys are probably familiar with, some of you probably aren't. We were really known for having a really great basketball team. And in 2017, while the project was going on, my team made it to the national NCAA championship, which was a huge deal. We'd never been there in school history. And so we played the UNC Tar Heels, and I'm watching the whole game with my family. We've got our jerseys on, we're excited, and we lose. Right. And I've heard of people like on the news, you see like after their Super Bowl team loses and people are like flipping over police cars and lighting trash cans on fire. And I never understood it until that day. Right. Because I felt literally like I felt sick to my stomach. Like my team just lost, like, ugh. And it was about 9 o'clock at night and I hadn't written my thank you cards. So it kind of begs the question, how do you write someone thank you cards if you're in the worst mood or attitude possible? And so I sit down at my desk and I'm just like racking my brain. I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And one of the greatest definitions that I'll share with you about the word gratitude, the best definition of the word gratitude is by Dr. Robert Emmons, who's the foremost researcher on gratitude and its positive effects in people's lives. The definition he gives is gratitude is the emotion one feels when you receive a gift or experience something as a gift. So another way of looking at that, like if someone gives you a gift unexpectedly, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, like that experience of gratitude makes a big difference. But there's also the experience of something as a gift, which we've all, probably had an early on relationship. Maybe it was high school and it was the love of your life. And then you broke up, right? And then in the moment, it's like, oh, life is over. Life sucks. This is terrible. Women suck, men suck, whatever you want to say, right? In that moment. And if you said to that kid, what are you grateful for? Right? They probably like flip you the middle finger. Like, what do you mean? There's nothing to be grateful for. Life sucks right now, right? Yet years later, with time and perspective, you can look back on that painful experience and say, oh yeah, I'm glad that happened because I found someone totally different who is better for me, right? We can look back on past pains and we can find the gift and we can feel good about these experiences. And so the question becomes, well, how long do you have to wait? Or is it merely just asking the question, where's the gift in this experience? So I sit there with these cards on my desk and I'm thinking about my team and how they just lost. And then I'm thinking about where's the gift? What's great about this? And what came up for me was, oh my gosh, I didn't watch our team lose the national championship. I just watched arguably the best team in my school's history play right now. Like this deserves celebration. So I said, I'm going to write a thank you card to every single member of the Gonzaga men's basketball team. And so I'm looking up everyone's records. I'm looking up their games. I'm looking up when they had, any newsreels that they were featured in. And I'm writing very personal thank you cards of like, huge games that they were a contributor to. I wrote them to the red shirts. And I said, hey, I know you redshirted this year, but championship teams aren't made in the championship game. They're made in every practice that led up to it. Thank you for challenging our team to be their best, right? And I just wrote cards to all the players, all the coaches, and I sent them off. And what was so cool, Lizzie, so the question was like, what were some of the challenges? Like the challenges were like, when you don't feel like being grateful, what do you do there, right? So I wrote these cards and I felt amazing, right? So that it transformed this like negative, frustrating experience to this one that was very joyful and very like, I was like, there's a lot of pride there. And so I sent those letters. I completely forget about it, right? 2 months later, no joke, on my birthday, which is actually this Friday, May 21st, 2 months later on my birthday, I get a letter in the mail. My wife hands it to me at dinner. She says, "Oh, you got this in the mail today." And it's from Gonzaga men's basketball. I'll show you the card. This is a handwritten card from Mark Few, the head coach of Gonzaga men's basketball, thanking me for all the letters that I wrote to the team, thanking me for being an alumni, thanking me for the support that I've given them, because they wouldn't be who they are without it. Like, he didn't need to do that. I didn't need to do it. And that's the whole nature of why I think this is so powerful, is because it comes from pure generosity. Not trying to get something. I wasn't trying to elicit that. I was just trying to express some gratitude. And it's like, when we make it a point to do this, to express active gratitude, we're playing the human lottery. And we never know when those people show back up in our lives, when they show back up with the deal, when they show back up with the referral. And that's what this year taught me. And so even when it's hard, right, to still try to do it anyways, to find the gift in the pain, because there's always something to be grateful for if we're looking for it. That's the key, if we're looking for it. So that's my long answer to your short question, Lizzie.
Logistically, how did you get everyone's addresses though? That did spark my.
Well, if you read the book, you'll notice there's a lot of different types of cards that I wrote. A lot of people, I try to physically hand it to them. So, and I did kind of a whole range of things where, like, I wrote them to politicians that I really valued, the local mayor for Plano, Texas. I wrote them to the head of the of the trash organization that picks up our trash, because after Christmas we had so many boxes from kids' toys and stuff that were like overflowing, that they like picked up all the extra debris and threw it away. So I wrote it to the trash men. I wrote them to authors of books that changed my life. I wrote them to speakers who impacted my life. I wrote thank you cards to people who were CEOs and owners of companies. Got responses back from Apple, Whole Foods. Whole Foods sent me a thank you letter back with like a $10 gift card, which I thought was really sweet. But I'm also like, what the hell am I going to buy at Whole Foods for $10, right? Like, that's like half of a granola bar. But it was a pretty cool experience. So a lot of it was just like seeking it out, finding it online, or if I needed it from somebody, I would just shoot them a text message. Just say, hey, what's your best address? We're updating our files for a Christmas card or something like that. I would just ask them for their address. Most people would give it to me. And funny enough, like when if I was sending them to celebrities or authors or whatever, I would just go to their website and I'd put an inquiry and I'd say, what's the best address to send Seth Godin a thank you card? And I did. I sent one to Seth Godin. I sent them to all sorts of writers and people who impacted my life.
What was the most unexpected response that you received?
Well, outside of that, let's see. One cool one is that I sent one. So there's a book that changed my wife's life. So she's a, oh gosh, I don't know if I have her card up here. The most unexpected. There's the Gonzaga one. I sent one to an author who wrote a book that changed my wife's life. Beth Moore, right? So she writes a lot of women's Christian Bible study things. So I wrote her a thank you card, just thanking her for the books that she's written and the impact it had on my wife. And she actually sent my wife a hand-signed book of her latest edition that just came out. So that was pretty neat. But we get all sorts of random weird things. Getting phone calls from pilots. Like, think about that. A pilot calls you or texts you after a flight. That's crazy. So we got a lot of different things. Yeah. Or we get thank you cards. This is my gratitude wall. So anytime someone sends me a thank you card, I read it, and then it goes up on my gratitude wall, and it reminds me of why we do what we do.
And then how have you seen that play out in your business, like in terms of like new customers, profits?
That's a great question. So there is a chapter in the book called the ROI of Gratitude. And so one of the things that we discovered, so there's some logistics, is that we had a 50% reduction in canceled business, which is an interesting thing. A lot of companies track what's called attrition, which is like you have a client and the deal falls through or whatever. So we tracked that, and we had made it a point that the moment we signed a deal with a client or we started doing business, we would send them a thank you card immediately. And what we discovered was that if there was any unsureness or concern on the client's part, they would actually wind up typically calling us after they got the thank you card. Then they would just canceling the order, and then we wouldn't hear from them again. So we had a 50% reduction, which by the way worked out to like thousands and thousands of dollars. And also just like endless referrals. I mean, we were just getting lots of referrals. Literally having somebody who just got a thank you card say, hey, I got your card in the mail. That was really sweet. You need to talk to my brother. Here's his phone number. And we close a huge deal with his brother, right? So it was like so many little things like that that made a big difference. And by the way, I'm not even saying like it needs to be a thank you card. Like I'm not trying to say this is like the cure-all thing for your business. Like do a video text. That's one of my huge things that I do now is a lot of times is I will take my phone out and I'll pull up someone's number. If you're ever in a bad mood, here's how to fix it. Take your phone out, scroll through until you find somebody you haven't talked to in a while, pull up a text message to them, pull up your video, and then record a 30 to 60-second video that just says what I love about you. Hey, I was thinking about you today. I just want to let you know how much I appreciate you and this thing that you did for me and how much I love you and your family and your values and what you guys, and just share what you love about this person. Send it. It does two things. Immediately it changes your attitude. And two, they respond almost immediately. So that was a fun thing that we've been testing ever since then, but there's a lot of different avenues, sending a gift, sending a book to somebody. There's a lot of different ways that you can package gratitude with something else that makes it more impactful than just a singular thank you card.
Wow, that's super impactful. Do you guys have any questions, or because I can keep going? I mean, I don't want to monopolize them.
Any questions?
Okay. If not, I have a really good one to wrap this up if people don't.
Sure.
Okay. So this was like probably one of the best speaking, even on Zoom, to be honest, that I've literally ever been a part of. I have to tell you, everyone told me that you were a great speaker. This was better than I expected. And so what action do you want people to take from hearing this? Obviously, tons of really great stories, tons of really like call to actions, but what's the one thing that you want us to walk away from here and just implement right away? And by the way, guys, the best business people are the fastest implementers. So this is a nugget.
Yeah, so great. Couple things. What to do from here? I would say for starters, keep it really simple. Like I hear from people after events like, oh my gosh, I love your story. I'm going to do that. I'm going to write 5 cards every day for a year. And my response is don't. It's really hard. Like it's stressful at times. But I say do the 30-day challenge. Just commit to that. Do 1 card every day for 30 days. Use MrThankYouProject.com. Track your cards. That's one simple thing. If you want to get the book, do that. If you feel this message, by the way, is relevant for any other organizations or groups that you're a part of and you want to bring it to them, the beautiful thing about Zoom is like we can do this all over the country and all over the world, right? So if you have an organization you feel that this would be valuable for, let us know. Just reach out to us on MrThankYou.com. That's just MrThankYou.com. And then we can talk from there. One last thing. So those are my action steps, right? So start a 30-day challenge, reach out if you need anything. Last thing. So how many of you guys are familiar with the 5 love languages? 5 love languages book, right? So what are they again? So it's like words of affirmation,
physical touch, quality time, acts of service,
gifts. There you go. Did you know there is a 6th love language? Do you guys know that? It's actually Lizzie's. You know what that is?
Leave Lizzie alone.
Referrals. Referrals are Lizzie's love language. When she gets a referral, she is like, oh, I feel the love. So my request is that you send Lizzie some business. You probably already do. You might have even sent her a deal today. But you know what? If you can find another buyer, another client that she can help her serve or put a quote together for, send it over. She paid some good money to host this event. There's a lot that went into this. So that's one way that you can show some appreciation. So those are my last things. And I'll just say thanks for being here, guys. I really hope this is worth your time. I hope you got some value that's going to impact you. And please stay in touch. Find me on social media. Everything is at the Mr. Thank You. You can email me directly, john@mrthankyou.com. And I love staying in touch with people. But that's it. I'll swing this back to wrap it up, Lizzie.
John, that was incredible. Thank you, guys. I call you Mr. Thank You. I'm totally happy if you guys call me Leave Lizzie Alone too. Just so you know. Too funny. Thank you guys all. I appreciate you guys for coming, and would love to hear how you guys are going to implement this in your business, and you'll see some thank you notes from me ASAP.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.